What's up, y'all? Welcome back. I'm Lex-Jordan Ibegbu, and you're tuned in to Wahala Talk. Today we have a very special guest. We have El Tiburon del Mar, the waves and the winds of a new era here in Wake County, and that is Wake County District Attorney Ms. Lorrin Freeman. Thank you so much for coming, Ms. Freeman.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so appreciative that you came. So we're going to get right into it. So some people have always wanted to be judges. Some have always wanted to be prosecutors. Did you always want to be a prosecutor and by extension become a district attorney?
Yeah, I've always had an interest in the criminal justice system and in the courthouse. I grew up around a courthouse. My father was a district attorney. My grandfather was a judge. But, I have seen the court system as being part of what makes our democracy great. And, I've been very invested in trying to make sure that we have a system that is fair and that the community feels good about. And so I've been blessed to be able to spend my career this way.
How was it when you first became Wake County District Attorney, being a woman and being the Wake County District Attorney, and also coming behind a man who was District Attorney for such a long period of time?
So I am the first woman District Attorney in Wake County, and so, certainly I realize that I stand on the shoulders of a lot of brave women who came before me, and people who went to law school for the very first time as a woman and may have been the only woman in their class, or people who ran for elected office and may have been the first woman to run for elected office in this county. But, I was fortunate to have had experience in the office right when I got out of law school. I spent about 1.5 years in that office as a young prosecutor, got to work for Colin Willoughby, who, as you mentioned, was the district attorney for 28 years. He certainly left a legacy of trying to, call shots down the middle. And so, I was proud to take over that office. I am one of several women district attorneys in the state, so it's certainly not a new thing for the state, just a new thing for this county, and largely, I think, because my predecessor did serve for so many years.
So do you think that you were building on what the foundation that Mr. Willoughby laid, or you were doing something that was different and that was avant-garde?
I think there's been a little bit of both. I mean, certainly, I have tremendous respect for Colin and the way he ran that office. But, I think it's also true that this is a little bit of a different time in America, and that, we hear a lot of discussion around the issues of criminal justice reform, and there's consensus really across a broad spectrum that there are things about the system that may not have worked well in the past that we need to look at. And so, I think that in many ways we have continued, the focus on public safety that I believe was so important to him, and the focus on trying to do the right thing. But I think we've also tried to look at things in a little bit different perspective when it's called for that.
It's good that you brought up that point. Sometimes when I'm in the community, I might be at the hair store, I may be running around tutoring kids, and people will just come up to me. They know I'm an attorney. They see me in court, and they'll say, "You know that prosecutor, that handsome prosecutor? I won't say names out here, but you know him. You know so and so. I like him. He's fair. He's honest." And I think that, and that's been mentioned to me about different prosecutors that you've hired. So I think it goes to the ideology that you're giving these young attorneys, and also your practices. But in juxtaposition to that, all across the country, Wake County isn't immune from it. I feel like you have prosecutors who are, to a certain extent, prosecuting, and they don't necessarily have the understanding of the people's and the lives that these people's lead that are prosecuting, and it's altering how they're dealing with those people. So what do you say as someone who is doing something a little different here in Wake County that can fix that, or what changes have you brought forth that are fixing that?
So I think there are a couple of things. I think first of all, I have worked very hard and very committed to increasing the diversity within the office and building an office that is reflective of the community. I think that's an important first step. And so we've really worked hard at doing that. I think it's also really important that people spend time in the community. And, one of the things that I have really tried to impress upon the folks that work with me, but also just through my activity in the community, is the collateral consequences that people who come through the criminal justice system face. And I think it's really important that, you know, we recognize that while certainly there needs to be an accountability piece, that these are people who have real lives, you know, have families, need to be able to support themselves, and, you know, that we think through what is the impact of what decisions we are making, you know, have on them.
I understand. I agree. And I saw in a previous interview that you previously mentioned that you try to keep politics out of the criminal justice system. But in previous, all of America, in North Carolina, we see that that's not necessarily the case. Whether they're Democrat or Republican, conservatives or liberal, you know, there's sometimes a tough on crime attitude that may prey on certain communities. But you have a different ideology. So how do you navigate those roads?
I think, you know, again, I'm fortunate to be serving at a time when I believe, and I think we're beginning to see some evidence of, that the community's attitude is beginning to change, and that, you know, it is beginning to be understood that locking people away and throwing the key away doesn't really solve the long-term problems in our community. And so you hear about much more talk about, you know, treatment and other things to try and help people be stable in a community. And absolutely that fits with my personal philosophy, but I think I'm lucky to be in a county, Wake County, that accepts that and embraces that and wants people to be strong and succeed. You know, I think that in terms of keeping politics out of the courthouse, I think that's really important. You know, we are the capital county for North Carolina, and as a result, one of the things I get to do that's a little bit different than a lot of my colleagues is I get involved in prosecution of state officials or, you know, voter fraud or other things that may be going on that really impact our democracy here in North Carolina. And I think it's really important that people don't perceive that, you know, I'm doing that in a way either that would be, you know, trying to further my own political ambitions, but more importantly, that it's not done in a way that people feel like I'm motivated by anything other than what all prosecutors should be motivated by, which is finding the truth and following the evidence.
100%, I agree. Now, we've seen that America is one of the only developed countries that employs the death penalty, and in different states is used in different ways. There's been some backlash in North Carolina in terms of the use of the death penalty, but you exercise that discretion. Why do you feel that you need that discretion in those instances? And also, what do you say to those who speak in contravention to your exercise of that discretion?
Right. So, you know, I think we are one of a number of states that still use the death penalty or have the death penalty as its maximum punishment, at least on the books, right? I mean, we haven't actually executed anybody in the state in over a decade, but under our law, the death penalty still is the maximum penalty. You're seeing in some states where that's beginning to be rolled back. As district attorney, I do have the discretion in cases as to whether to seek that maximum punishment or not. It is a decision that we take very seriously. We tend to seek the death penalty only in the cases that we feel are the most egregious. It's less than 5% of the cases here in Wake County. And really our decision in those cases is that the community should make that decision. That, you know, that whether the maximum punishment given the facts in that case is appropriate ultimately is a decision that needs to be made not by me but by 12 peers and by the community through the jury. I think what you are seeing statewide and nationally is fewer, and here in Wake County, fewer and fewer death penalty cases are solved. You know, when I was elected district attorney and took the oath to be district attorney, you know, I committed to upholding the law. And the law in this state at this time remains that the death penalty is the maximum punishment. You
spoke about that you chose to prosecute certain elected officials, and that was it gives a certain balance to the state and to the county. But in this age, you have also chosen not to or chosen to investigate certain officers for different actions they have taken in regards to North Carolina and Wake County citizenry. So in this age of the high level of visible police state violence and also visible awareness and wokeness of the citizenry, a la Black Lives Matter, what message do you think this sends? And when something you do that seems to be unpopular by one side, how do you navigate that and make sure that you're making the right decision?
So, a few things come to mind there. First of all, I firmly believe that law enforcement has a difficult job, and we are lucky largely to have people who are willing to put on, a uniform, go out and try and keep our community safe, and put themselves and their lives, at risk in doing so. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I firmly believe that no one can be above the law. And, there are limitations, and there need to be limitations mm-hmm. on, law enforcement authority and specifically on law enforcement use of force. And I think that when we have situations where, force is used in an arrest that is beyond what the law provides, when that goes unchecked, mm-hmm. all that serves to do, in my opinion, is, one, create greater distrust in mm-hmm. the community, but also, put officers at further risk, right? Because mm-hmm. people feel like nobody's keeping them, in check. And I think in many ways, our relationship, all of our relationship with law enforcement and with government in general, ideally, is built on a sense of trust and a relationship where, we know that if people don't follow the line and the law, that there's going to be some accountability there. I think we are in an era where all the use of video, whether it's body cam or dash cam video, mm-hmm. Frankly, I've seen cases where that plays both ways, mm-hmm. right? Where it's, kind of shows that maybe what the allegations are or what people want to say law enforcement was doing, turns out they weren't. And mm-hmm. we can see that clearly. But we've also had cases in which, it has helped be able to show that a use of force mm-hmm. Was not appropriate. And you see that nationally in various, cases. Mm-hmm. In evaluating these cases, I try very hard to not ignore the risk and the dangers that law enforcement may face on a daily basis, but to really look at a situation and follow the evidence. Mm-hmm. And, when law enforcement exceeds their scope of authority, I think my responsibility is to try and draw a line there and do something about it. And so, unfortunately, as district attorney, you learn pretty quick that many decisions you make are going to make somebody unhappy. Mm-hmm. And once you are at a point that you are able to come to grips with that and mm-hmm. accept that, it can actually be in its own way a liberating thing, in that you know that no matter what you do, there are going to be people on either side who may feel like you should have done something differently. Mm-hmm. And so what you have to try to do is really kind of, not ignore, because you always want to be aware of what your community norms are and how your community feels about issues, but not allow that to necessarily sway you mm-hmm. in a way that is not following the evidence. And, mm-hmm. and you follow the evidence and apply the law and try and make those, tough decisions. I am fortunate that, I've had a lifetime of mentors who mm-hmm. have over and over again, embedded, just do the right thing, and, don't worry about your own kind of, the risk that you might be assuming personally about it. Just do mm-hmm. the right thing and everything will work out. And so, when I evaluate these cases in which there may be strong feelings on both sides of an issue, I try to follow the evidence, follow the law, and just make what I think is the best decision. Doesn't mean those aren't hard. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. There are dark days when you're having to make hard decisions, and that to some extent they may not be popular decisions. But you have to make that decision and move on to the next day.
So a lot of people in your position would quiver, but you don't seem to equivocate. So what within you gives you that gumption to absent, the hollers from here that may have supported you before but don't because you made an unpopular decision for them, or the hollers over here that may have rolled with you after, but because of that, what the decision or the way you chose to move.
Right, and I've had some of that, but I mean, I've had people who supported me in past election cycles who chose not to support me this past time because of decisions I've made, and were very public about their unhappiness about decisions I've made, and specifically decisions around use of force cases. I have to get up every morning and look myself in the mirror, and I have to be able to go to bed every night and lay my head on the pillow. And at the end of the day, if I don't feel like I have done what I earnestly believe is the right thing, I can't do that in good conscience. And so, again, I mean, I've been fortunate to have a lifetime of people who have taught me that. And, I try and adhere to that. And I try and, be aware of the fact that, there are a lot of people in our country and in our community who feel like the system doesn't work for them. That they feel like, that it doesn't represent them and that it's not fair. And it's really important to me that people have a sense that, that the system is theirs and that it is fair.
Do you feel like your father influenced that in you?
I think so, absolutely. My dad, my grandfather, other mentors I've had. Certainly my faith, and educates and instructs me in certain ways as well.
I understand. Now, we previously spoke about reform. The issue of money bail and bond is a hot topic. I've had clients who sat in jail for months on end without seeing a date. I've had clients who pled out even though I knew they might have been innocent, just because they weren't built to be in jail. They weren't that's not them. So absent overarching legislation that may or may not go on in the North Carolina legislature, what do you think can be done in Wake County to kind of combat that imbalance?
Right. I think it is a topic that is getting a lot of discussion right now, and that it should be. I mean, we don't want to be penalizing people based on, the amount of money they have. That's not what the criminal justice system is designed to do. It shouldn't do it, and yet we all, have to face the fact that there are parts of it that operate that way, right? And so, I'm fortunate to have be part of a team at the courthouse. Chief District Court Judge Robert Rader, our Senior Resident Superior Court Judge Paul Ridgway, who are responsible for kind of helping oversee the bail practices here in Wake County, who are sensitive to this issue and who don't want to be holding people unnecessarily. And so, we're looking at a couple of things. We've had in this county for many years a pretrial release program. At any given time, we have 500 to 600 people out on that pretrial release program. The county has been an important partner in helping to fund that. They also currently are trying to help us improve our assessment tool for determining when people should be released. Other counties have done that and have seen, an increase in the number of people they feel like they can safely release. And so, we're trying to put in place a new tool in the next few months that would look at, are we making sure we're really only keeping those people who either create a risk of not showing back up for court or who, create a risk of public safety. We've tried to put in place, and the state's put in place, some tools such as the court notification system, so people can, sign up and get notice of their court date on their cell phone or email. I mean, it seems pretty simple, but we're all living in a day and age when you get notice of your dental appointment or your hair appointment or whatever. And in communities where they have used that, they have found that it does reduce the number of times people fail to appear for court. So, I think we are looking at those issues. We are trying to evaluate and make sure that people who are being held or people who need to be held, for legitimate reasons. And, certainly we have all heard the stories of people feeling like, they've got to take a plea just so they can get out. And, that's never kind of our objective. We don't we are not interested in convicting people who are not guilty.
I understand. So I was once in traffic court, and I remember I was counting in the line. It was some days it's calm, some days it's bustling. I was counting in the line. It was 11 people, and I counted. And out of those 11 people, we're in North Carolina, we're in the South. About 8 of those people were of color, the majority of which were black, and a couple of Latino people, and then 3 of them were white. And for whatever reason, I just counted it just to see in my head. Now, in Wake County, only I think about like 25% of the population is black. Now, this doesn't speak to any part of the prosecution. The DA's office, this speaks to necessarily policing, but what can we do as attorneys, not just the DA's office, but as attorneys and also as a part of the DA's office to kind of offset this imbalance, because the people that are being placed are not necessarily the only people who are committing not only maybe the traffic citations or the crimes or so forth.
Right. So I think, first of all, we all, this is an ongoing discussion and debate, right, in the criminal justice system. And there are those people who would like to, try and push back on that kind of statistic and that kind of, and, I have for a long time said, we need to first accept and acknowledge that there is an overrepresentation of people of color impacted by the criminal justice system, and own that and stop trying to pretend like it doesn't exist. Okay. And I think that's important for those of us who work in the system, whether prosecution, law enforcement, whatever, to acknowledge that that is where we are. And until we really, are willing to acknowledge that, I think it's really hard to drill down and figure out, okay, so why are we here? What is going on that creates this? I think we try to certainly and have all kinds of deferral programs, and we try to find ways, to divert people even once they come into the system, on the front end. And they're first-time offenders largely, but we do have other, some other deferrals as well to try and give people that other opportunity. As prosecutors, we have, we deal with the cases that come in the door. And, we certainly want to be sensitive to the fact that that we're being fair across the board. Hopefully, as this discussion continues and as people are more forthcoming with the fact that this is a problem that we as a country need to face, hopefully we will begin to identify what the solutions are. I think some of it is policing practice, certainly. I think some of it may, be connected to what we've talked about a few minutes ago, and may also have to do with people's, income levels and things that might put them in a position where they, aren't able to pay their insurance, aren't able to pay to get their car inspected, aren't able to pay, to keep up their registration, and things that tend to be compliance type offenses. And so, I think we have to, look at what are the various enforcement policies that might be leading to this, and then I think we have to evaluate, is that really what we want? If not, we need to change those policies.
I understand. I agree. So do you see yourself in the vein of Mr. Willoughby, staying in this realm and continuing to not equivocate, continuing to stand tall and usher in the reform that's needed in this, ever growing and changing face of Wake County? Or do you see yourself going into a broader lens and taking the experience that you've gained to take, what you've done? Well, Wake County is very big, so I won't say on a micro level, but take what you've done in the county and take it broader throughout the state or the region.
Yeah, I am very committed to the job that I have and feel like I am very blessed in that it is a job in which you can make a tremendous impact in your community and in people's lives. And there is still lots of work to be done here in Wake County. There are lots of, some of the things we've talked about, pretrial release reform, other types of criminal justice reform, continuing to build a system, ideally, that the community feels like works for them and is fair, that is sensitive to collateral consequences and sensitive to, helping people who are exiting the criminal justice system get up on their feet and be stable. That's a matter of public safety too, keeping them from reoffending, right? But helping people find ways to return to employment and other things, all of which the decisions that we make impact at the end of the day. And so, I'm lucky to be part of the Conference of District Attorneys, and I get to share. I had a colleague come visit today, and we get to talk about what we're doing here in Wake County and learn from other counties. And so we certainly have that kind of statewide influence. But I am not at this time looking to do anything more than hopefully contribute in the position that I have every day in making this community safe. And making, again, a court system that people feel like they can trust.
I understand. Well, I hope you continue to usher in this wave, continue to be the winds of change, so that Wake County, and by extension, since we're the capital county, the state and the South can follow our lead as they have done in the past. So I just want to thank you so much for coming. Again, you didn't have to. I'm so appreciative that you came to speak on Wahala Talk. You said you're very transparent and open, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So I look forward to seeing how you continue to grow the county. What are your next steps, and where we will be in the coming years. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and don't ever hesitate to bring me feedback. Okay.
Most definitely. And again, until next time, this is Miss Wake County District Attorney Lorrin Freeman. I'm Lex-Jordan Ibegbu, and you're watching Wahala Talk. Peace.